Hello, and welcome back to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. Each episode, I'll read you a piece of super short fiction. All of them are 1,000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading a story called A Shared Journey. Please be aware that this story deals with themes of death, so if that's likely to upset you or anyone that you're with, then you might want to skip this one. One of the saddest things to see, at least for me, is someone forcing a smile when you know they're deeply unhappy. I could tell something was wrong. Her lips were forced upward into a thin, wan smile, but you could see, as soon as you looked into her eyes, that there was no real emotion behind it. Instead, she seemed defeated, hollowed out by some kind of unknown tragedy. "Where's it to tonight?" she asked somewhat blankly. 36 Eastern Lane, I replied. It'd been a long night for me, and all I wanted to do right now was get home and fall in bed. We rode in silence for a while, until she turned on the radio. Adverts blared out of the speakers, cutting the mood in the car with an almost darkly comic absurdity. I suspected that neither of us were particularly keen to find out about new coffee brands right now. As the last jingle ended, the DJ came on air, spouting something about Saturday night parties and a phoning competition. I was barely listening. I doubted she was either. After a few minutes of this chatter, a song came on. I didn't recognize it. To me, it sounded like just another pop song, easily lost in the mix. The same did not seem to be true for her, though. I could see tears welling in her eyes, then running slowly down her cheek. "Excuse me," she said quietly, as though ashamed of herself. She turned the radio off and sat in silence again for a moment. As we pulled up to wait at a red light, I could hear her gently sobbing. It was clear she was trying to hide it. The smile was still plastered on her face inexplicably, but the sounds coming from her were growing louder and clearer, and her shoulders began visibly shaking. The light turned green and we drove off again, but I was growing increasingly concerned. For her, yes, but also for myself. Could she even see with her eyes full of tears like this? We swerved erratically, giving me the answer to my question. "Can we pull over, please?" I said, growing increasingly nervous. "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry," she replied, pulling into a parking space at the side of the pavement. Switching off the engine and the meter, she turned to face me fully for the first time. I could see that something was affecting her very seriously. Her eyes were red now, her face blotchy and swollen. You don't have to pay," she said. "I shouldn't have come out to work tonight. I'm so sorry. I couldn't stay home. She trailed off, and we both sat there in a confused and desperate silence for a few moments. "I'll call one of the other drivers on the radio," she said, smiling thinly again. "Get someone else to come pick you up. I'm really sorry to do this to you." "It's okay," I said, trying to make my voice as warm and comforting as it's possible to do with a stranger in a dark car parked by the side of the road. "We can talk about it if you want," I offered. "Whatever it is." "I don't know if I should," she replied quietly. "I don't think it's very professional. Well, I've been acting professional this whole time, I guess. But it's not your problem, and I don't want to burden you with it. I should probably go home and..." She stopped again, sobbing silently, tears running down her face. I waited, trying to give her the space she needed to say what she wanted to say. "But the body's there," she eventually choked out between sobs. "I just didn't know what to do. I knew I had to call an ambulance, but there was no heartbeat, no pulse, and it seemed like, well, what can they do? And I was already meant to be on shift tonight anyway, so I guess maybe I thought I'd come home and it would all be different. He'd still be there and everything would be normal, and he wouldn't be. She trailed off into a wave of tears, unable to finish the sentence or complete the thought. I sat silently, wondering what I could possibly say to her. As her crying slowly subsided, I made up my mind. Suddenly my exhaustion seemed the least of the concerns here. "Take me there," I said, a little too boldly, adding quickly, "If you want to, of course. I'm sure you have no reason to trust me, but I want to help if I can. I'll call the ambulance for you and I'll clean things up as best I can. Or I can get out now, find another taxi and go home. It's up to you, but I can help if you want me to." She looked at me for a second, confused and unsure. Neither of us know what we're doing here or what's going to come next, I thought to myself. I could see her thinking my offer over, weighing her options as best she could in her fragile emotional state. "No," she said eventually, it wouldn't be right. I've already made enough bad decisions tonight. You go home. I need to face this myself." "Are you sure? I really don't mind helping," I asked, feeling like I was offering to pick up some shopping, not clean up a dead body. "I'm sure," she said. "I'm sorry," I replied, stepping out and wishing I could conjure some more comforting words. "I hope it will be okay for you." She smiled thinly again, her eyes lighting up briefly before she drove off into the night. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I've been your host, Thomas Flower. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, Nictate, and the Sharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your preferred streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and you'll join us next time for some more super short fiction.